Marty? Section 214 of the tax code assumes a caregiver has to be a woman. This is sex-based discrimination against a man.
Poor guy.
If a federal court ruled that this law is unconstitutional, then it could become the precedent others refer to and build on. Men and women both. It could topple the whole damn system of discrimination.
That was a clip from On the Basis of Sex, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by the star of the film, Felicity Jones. Great to see you.
Hi, hello, lovely to see you too.
I was just saying that I didn't know anything about her watching this film, and I feel slightly ashamed that I didn't. Did you know much about Ruth going into this film?
No, I didn't. She's not hugely well known in the UK, so I didn't know a lot about her. My mum actually had been listening to a radio programme about her about a year before I got the script, and she had mentioned her. She said, there's this extraordinary lawyer in the US who I think, is quite a fascinating person. And then when I read the script, that was the only knowledge I had of her. And my mum was correct. Yes. And I just read it in one sitting and was just completely entranced with her determination and her resilience. And she was someone who constantly had doors slamming in her face and was being discriminated against on so many levels and continually, even to this day, has overcome an enormous amount of negativity.
How would you describe the film? Because it's a wonderful exploration of her and this life, and you cover quite a long period of her life as well. But how do you describe the film?
It's very much an exploration of what she achieved in terms of overturning gender discrimination in the US. And also it's about her family life. The screenplay was written by Daniel Stiepelman, who is
her nephew. He's brilliant. Such a cool chap. And so we knew from the very beginning that we had their blessing and their involvement. And Justice Ginsburg had given numerous comments on all the drafts of the script that he'd presented to her. So she was intimately involved from the very, very beginning of the film. Do we have to refer to her as Justice Ginsburg then? We can't call her Ruth.
I know. Well, I kept, when I was doing press in the States, I kept saying, "Oh, Ruth. Oh, she was great. Oh, Ruthie." And then I thought, maybe I should use her formal title. So now I just sort of am indecisively moving between Justice Ginsburg and Ruth. But I do feel because I feel like I know her so well. Yeah. It does feel really natural to call her Ruth.
It's really interesting, and I find it fascinating reading, kind of how you, with the preparation that goes into that and meeting her. And I think I read that you'd asked if you could take some pictures when you met her. What did you take pictures of and why?
Well, she's extraordinarily idiosyncratic, and I think that's what has made her, she's become such a punk icon, such a cultural icon. And one of the things was her, we were walking around her flat together, and in her bedroom, her desk is half a metre away from her bed, and it's almost like an altar, the way it's lit up. And and I took pictures of that and kind of asked her about it, and she said, I realised it was a great way of saving time. If I have a good idea in the middle of the night, then I can just jump up and write it down, and I won't forget it. So there's just a level of dedication with which she has conducted herself that is in every aspect of her life. And I think she absolutely loves what she does. Mm-hmm. And it was about capturing that. I don't think she sees it as work. She doesn't see it as something she has to get through. She has a absolute passion for lawmaking, for the US. She believes deeply in her country and wants to make it a fairer and better place.
She had to fight, constantly throughout her life, and what she fought for is kind of, has made so many opportunities for so many people, sort of thing. Was there anything in particular that, when doing your research and in the script and playing this part, that she faced and came across that really sort of stayed with you and surprised you?
I think it was the amount of times she had doors slammed in her face, and the the constant obstacles. She was discriminated against on every level for her gender, her religion, even where she was from, being from Brooklyn, and just the way that she managed to overcome that, and in a fascinating way, the way that she seeks to bring people together. She's actually quite a moderate politically, and she's always conducted herself in a way that she hasn't alienated people, and she made it seem absolute common sense that these laws that were conforming to outdated gender stereotypes needed to be overturned, and she did it in a very careful, deliberate way over many, many years.
There's an absolutely extraordinary scene in the film where you give this speech in court, which is about 5.5 minutes long, and I've heard that it might well be the longest or one of the longest speeches made by a woman in American cinema.
Yeah, I didn't realise
crazy.
That. Yeah, it was only when I actually read the the notes that our producer had given, and he had mentioned that. He said it is, it's one of these, the longest time that a woman is on screen speaking.
Wow, that's crazy.
It is. Well, the film is, in some ways, it's very revolutionary. It actually is pushing against so many old-fashioned ideas.
Even the thing with Army, I believe, as well, which was, I don't know if this is right or not, but there was a question about finance because they felt like his character was too supportive or something as well. It's like, come on.
Yeah. Well, that's what we've continually found, that there's actually been quite a lot of pushback against the film. And I think partly it is because it is about a woman who triumphs in her career, incredibly successful, but her relationship also stays intact. And at the end of the film, she gets to walk away with her family and with her partnership. And I think people aren't used to seeing that. She gets to live at the end. She doesn't have to die and suffer for her achievements.
Yeah.
And there's something quite unique in that storytelling.
Yeah, it's incredible. Going back to that 5.5 minute speech and that extraordinary moment in the film, how was it for you to deliver that? To be in that whole kind of environment. It's such a wonderful kind of crescendo as well.
Yeah, well, I was quite lucky because we almost shot the film pretty much chronologically.
Does that help then?
Oh, it does enormously. Although it's much. Some of the hardest bits were the scenes we shot set in the 50s, which we shot in the first couple of weeks, and actually finding out who she was when she was younger was much more difficult because there's such a strong presence of her from when she was nominated onto the Supreme Court from about 1993, when she's a much older woman. So trying to understand, okay, who was she when she was in her 20s? She didn't come out fully formed as the notorious RBG. And that was some of the harder stuff, kind of showing this person trying to navigate their way and making mistakes and stuff not always going according to plan.
I also loved, there's so many lovely kind of story threads throughout the film. The beautiful relationship that she has with her husband, but also this really kind of honest relationship she has with her daughter. But what I loved about it as well within that relationship was this wonderful kind of sort of almost regeneration of feminism that was passed from generation to generation, from older women that Ruth was around to Ruth to then on to her daughter. That's a wonderful thing to explore.
Yeah, that's such a huge part of the film. And when we showed, we had a screening in Washington, which Ruth came to, and she did a Q&A before, and she spoke about the legacy of these great women who had changed the gender laws throughout history. And she was talking particularly about Dorothy Kenyon, who is played by Kathy Bates brilliantly in the film. And she used this great phrase. She said, I stand on the shoulders of these great women. And I thought it was such a powerful phrase to use, because obviously we are so used to a kind of handing on the baton of from man to man. It was wonderful for her to create this idea of a matriarchal lineage.
So did you watch the film with her then?
I did. I did
my
actually.
God, I can't imagine how that feels.
It was. Well, I had luckily not the first time she saw it, and apparently after the first screening, when Daniel took the film with Mimi Leader, the director, for her to go and see it,
and done a wonderful job.
Who just totally kind of just brought so much of her soul to it. I think ultimately. But Ruth apparently at the end of the screening stormed out. And everyone was in shock. What's happened? Did she not like it? And then came back in and she said, "Oh no, I just needed to go to the bathroom." So so they were really worried. But she's really enjoyed it. I think she's really enjoyed the experience. She's been incredibly supportive of it. And it was pretty petrifying sitting behind her, watching her watch it and seeing her response.
Because I imagine that as well as, you know, her having, you know, thoughts on you playing her, also that relationship she had with her husband, with Marty, and I, from what I read, she a bit of a soft spot for Army and was very happy with his performance and his casting. Well,
that's what, we went to see her initially just before we started shooting, and we were all standing outside. We were at the Supreme Court, all really nervous, you know, wanting to impress her. And we were waiting before we were called in to go and formally meet her in her office. And as we went in, she just couldn't take her eyes off Armie Hammer and was just beaming up at him. And then there's this, because Marty loved cooking, and there's this cookbook that they sell at the Supreme Court full of his recipes.
Oh, wow.
She picked it up and handed it to him. And in that sort of, in the utter joy that I could see in her eyes, I thought, oh, she is human. That's good. She's not a saint. This is useful information.
You've been, I read that you've been looking for a role like this for a while. What in particular were you looking for and you found in this role, do you think?
I was looking for, actually I was going down the route of Working Girl and thinking, okay, what would that could be interesting in terms of developing a script, and thinking what would be the modern context of that. And I was just really fascinated at that moment about how to explore a woman being incredibly ambitious and career focused, and obviously the lighter version of that would be something like Legally Blonde. So then when On the Basis of Sex came along, I thought, well, this actually has that. It has the humour. It has the, there's a wit to it, but it also has this underbelly of being about shifting gender politics, which is something that is really important to be addressing at the moment.
Yeah. It was really, when you were talking about the fact she said about her little table by her bed, it feels like you've almost kind of inherited that from her, because I read an article with you where you said that you'd woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you'd had thought about your speech you were going to write for your award that you won at the BIFAs. Congratulations on that as well. So that you've learnt something from her as well.
I'm definitely channeling her. There's a desk that is going to get closer and closer to the bed. My husband will be like, what's going on?
It's so exciting to see what's next. I mean, I think just in terms of the way that you approached Jyn in Star Wars and how important a female character she was in that world. I know with Gareth kind of saying that great thing that he wanted, you know, little boys to look up to her and see her as a real role model, I thought was fantastic. And you make such great choices. What's next?
I've got a film coming out at the end of the year with Eddie Redmayne and I are working together again.
Is that Tom Harper?
Tom Harper, called The Aeronauts.
Oh, great.
Which we finished at the end of last year.
Reunited.
So looking forward to that. Yeah. But I think always the focus is just on putting interesting stories into the world, and maybe stories that question the status quo a little bit as well, that have a little bit of punk spirit like RBG.
Well, thank you for introducing me to her world and making me fascinated by it. And congratulations. Great to chat to you. Thanks,
Lovely.
Felicity. Thank you.
Thank you very much.